Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me on another beautiful afternoon here in Germany today at Lightweight Performance, where I'm going to be looking for the first time for me at the new BMW 1 Series and in particular the Lightweight M135. Now this car is not so standard, it features a host of upgrades and modifications. It's in Misano blue, but you can see the new carbon fibre front splitter, the new wheels, it's got a new suspension setup, and crucially it also has a rather nice sounding exhaust system which over here in Germany is TÜV approved. Today I'll show you around all of the modifications, then we're going to hop on board to take it out for a drive, a first drive for me in the new car, which is clearly very different to the old generation. The four-wheel drive setup with a 2-litre 4-cylinder. Let's have a look around it then and go out to see what it's all about. Of course, it's a car that comes with great controversy. The 1 Series was always rear-wheel drive, it was always about the joy of driving, but the new cars are completely different. Set up based on the same chassis as the Minis, you've got in this case the 4-wheel drive system like in the Countryman or the Clubman, so we've got the 4-wheel drive along with a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine which makes 306 horsepower as standard, 330 horsepower as this car is set up at the moment. As I mentioned, it's got an entirely new exhaust system, so have a look back here. It's been made much better looking by adding the carbon fibre diffuser from Lightweight and having the quad tailpipes. Normally you'd have one on each side. They actually do a system which offers the one on each side as well, or you can upgrade if you'd like to change the diffuser to their carbon fibre setup and then house the full exhaust that you have here. They've also got the carbon fibre spoiler which has the additional lightweight gurney flap up on the top as well, a bit more downforce on the car at the back of it. They've got their own wheels, 20-inch wheels, which you can see have some very low profile tyres. I'll be experiencing what these are like to drive in a moment, but a forged wheel with, as I said as well from Eibach, a completely new suspension setup with 10 adjustable positions in terms of changing it. Lightweight performance very much being about making these cars suitable to be driven on the track, to be enjoyed, to be driven hard, and of course matching the spoiler at the rear, we have this extended carbon fibre lip splitter around the front as well. Of course, equally, there's been a lot of discussion about the new grills, about the larger grills, the direction that BMW are going, all to do with marketing, to do with lifestyle, but I'm curious what this is actually going to be like to drive inside. First time in my life actually having a look at the new 1 Series, but inside here we've got the very nice finish, the new seat designed for the car, as well as some upgrades from Lightweight, including the Alcantara steering wheel, the badging that you can see, the floor mats as well. Let me take a seat inside. We will start it up, take a listen. Sounds surprisingly good. Now we do have the different driving modes, so you can go up into sport, for example. I must admit, I'm quite surprised by the amount of sound that this makes. This will be interesting when we go out in a second. We've got the updated displays, so the digital central screen, the Idrive system that was effectively from the 8 Series, much nicer touchscreen system. Obviously down here, the LW M135 designation as well, and the 8-speed auto as found in the Minis. Oh, we've got the radio giving us the traffic announcements. Our first stop is going to be to pop some fuel inside, but otherwise I'm looking forward to actually seeing what this is like. Like, is it still fun to drive? Does the 4-wheel drive system take away from that? It's a beautiful day. We're in some amazing locations around here, so let's take it out, go see what it's actually like. Unfortunately, in typical fashion, when I want to take a car out for a drive, it has started to drizzle, but we do have some sunshine up ahead and some glorious roads to go and enjoy in a car that is quite a departure from its predecessors. And going way back, in 2008, I used to have a 1 Series. I had one of the first 1 Series coupes, a 123D, so it was a diesel, not an M135i, or a 135i as it was called back at the time. After that car came another generation of the 1 Series, where the 2 Series became a departure with the coupe and the convertible, but this car is an all-new approach, making the car effectively more to appeal to the masses, more daily drivable, platform sharing with the Mini being part of the BMW brand, but by not having all of the power going exclusively to the rear wheels, means a little bit more space in the back, but also luggage space in the rear, 380 litres, right up there with the class that you would expect now for this car. You sacrificed a little bit of that by having the powertrain going to the back. Now we're driving in sport mode. This is a particularly nice road to go out and enjoy, and in fact, before we really get going, I'm going to put the gearbox into sport as well. You can hear it dropping a gear, just taking a slightly lower gear. It actually sounds pretty good, I have to say. this is the perfect road, and we are heading up towards the sunshine, which is also just what I was after. So driving like this, I notice in sport mode versus normal mode, you get much more of a kick from the gearbox that shove in the back when you're going up through the gears. Of course, this car is set up to be much more dynamic with the changes to the suspension with Eibach, and also running on the large wheels, and I thought the ride might turn out to be pretty aggressive and firm, but it's not that bad. It's very go-kart-like, which is what you'd expect. Again, characteristics of the Minis with this kind of form factor, but without the car being front driven. Obviously a slightly different power and style of delivery. Just toying with it, learning, getting a small feel. Yeah, that's where you start to feel some of that power going towards the front, the tendency or desire almost to understeer, I was going to say, but then it wanted to slide around a little bit at the end, at the exit of the turn as well. So I'm not necessarily flying up the road, but enjoying it quite a lot. It's actually a little bit better than I thought. My ears are popping from going up the hill. Empty road ahead, so can we overtake? I think we can overtake. Safely does it, apart from the weather. But four-wheel drive, you know, this is, I suppose, the general market discussion. You get safety benefits of the four-wheel drive system in terms of stability on the road, but you also do get performance benefits. Quicker on the power out of corners, quicker off the line if you want to do a launch control. And for 330 horsepower, this actually feels pretty nippy as well. In fact, let's just go manual. I've been driving in automatic. Let's drop it down to second gear and just accelerate a little bit. That's a massive kick it gives you when you're up towards the red line. Traction kicking in just a little bit there. Maybe I'd like a touch more, and I know they're working on increasing the power of this ever so slightly beyond where it is at the moment. You have a line of traffic though, so this is where we've got the opportunity then to pop it back into drive, chill out just a touch. You can put the suspension into comfort mode if you'd like, but I'm actually quite happy with it in sport. We are on very smooth tarmac, I will point this out. We've got some trucks up ahead, so we're not on very bumpy, rough British countryside roads, for example. Completely different type of driving environment to where we are now. But there's still a little bit of fun character out of it, but it doesn't give you that instant spark and joyous character that you get from the older cars, you know, from the previous generation, the M240i, M140i that came before it. The gearbox is much smoother. When you're in the regular drive setting, it doesn't give you that thump in the back. You can configure the sport modes, by the way. You can set up exactly how you'd like it, so you can change these factors independently. But driving for me, probably I'm going to pop it down back into sport. Hey, we're behind an RS6, which is D-badged. That's the way it's done out here in Germany. No signs that that is a beast of a car, just completely subtle and discreet, although behind the truck is not the greatest thing in the world. One thing that I'm not the biggest fan of actually is the steering wheel. Now I do like the lightweight, have made it into Alcantara as opposed to leather, which it would be in by default, but for me this steering wheel is just a little bit too chunky, almost too big to actually manage to grip properly, which obviously slightly detracts from some of the driving experience. I'd prefer it to be a little bit thinner and a little bit easier to hold. Let's pop it back into sport mode, hold the gears a little bit longer, foot down. There are some great roads around here, just trying to do my best to avoid the rain wherever possible, which seems rather unpredictable. All in all though, on these silky smooth roads, I have to say this drives in general better than I expected. You're very conscious of that front bias power delivery as opposed to the rear wheel drive of before, especially when the roads do get a little bit slippy like they are today, but generally it just has an exciting go-kart feel to it, like a Mini does. It feels a little bit smaller, even though it might not be. It's grown ever so slightly from the previous car. There's more space inside, more leg room, more knee space, more headroom, just all round, I guess, more practical, more usable, more livable with, which is what they're going for. Remember, when it comes to markets around the world, for many people it's not so much about being a driving enthusiast car, but more about what it's actually like to use, to live with, to go about business as usual. And it pains me sometimes to say that, but I do understand it slightly. I hope, of course, that there will be other derivatives that do come down the line, you know, the new M140, M240. Obviously we've got a new, well, M2 potentially based on this platform further down the line as well. But yeah, you know, no slip at all, nothing like that. Out of corners on slightly damp tarmac. So let's pop it back into drive, chill out for a moment, take it easy. My ears are popping left, right and centre thanks to all of the hills that we're going up and over. This is a great place to have come with this car. It's all about taking a car to the right environment to drive it, and this is where this is at home. And I would imagine, thanks to all of these modifications and changes that Lightweight have made, it's probably pretty good on the Nürburgring as well. They actually started about 10 years ago or so making new exhaust systems, which is still fundamentally part of the business, but now also making carbon fibre parts, doing complete conversions. They've done some massive projects on 1Ms, on M2s. In fact, they're basically M2 and M2 competition specialists, doing a lot of exhausts which are all TÜV approved, but sound about as loud as you can go while still within regulations. They've done, obviously, tuning big power outputs up to high 600 horsepowers in M2s, depending what it is exactly that the customer is after. We're going to come back, I guess, onto an open road again. This is a perfect place, actually, to be driving. This is really cool. I don't know where I'm going at each junction other than just turning out, accelerating and enjoying the environment, enjoying the drive, and being in such a great place to be doing it. You still feel like you can chuck it through a corner, but that's where no slip at all, straight out again, big kick on the upshift towards 7,000 RPM or so. I mean, it's quick. When it comes to point A to B cars, this is up there. I guess it's a similar philosophy in terms of the drivetrain as my Focus RS, and I enjoy driving that so much. So I can see why this makes sense, and I'm always a fan of making a car more dynamic. Whenever I drive a special edition of a car that's taken the vanilla model and dialed it up, made it more focused, given it shorter ratios, tightened up the suspension, these kind of things, it's always more exciting than the base version, always, every time. So I can see how this setup from Lightweight would tick the boxes when it comes to this specific car. If you have an M135i and you want to make it more of a car that would be fun to drive on the track. Now, one thing that I do notice about the car is that if you're in manual, let's say I go to manual right now, sport mode and manual, and drop it down, or maybe have it in 4th gear, until you're in the range, you're waiting for the power. You want it to just give you power, and it takes a while to get to spool up and give you that, obviously, turbo engine. But the engine, talking about the engine actually, I haven't really considered this, but it doesn't sound as bad as I thought it would. I'm kind of just in the BMW swing of things. Obviously there's a bit of sound being piped in, which probably changes the tone, and I imagine outside it's quite significantly quieter than it is actually inside the car. But for me, it just instantly felt like a BMW. It felt like how you expect a BMW to sound inside. That's really interesting in its own right, thinking about it. I do think when you upshift in the settings like they are at the moment, you get too much of a not necessarily real feeling kick, and that is a BMW trait. You do find that in some of the bigger cars as well. But overall, I guess my feedback is, steering wheel I'd like to be slightly smaller, gearbox I'd like to give you slightly less of a kick, but the general drive, handling and feel, particularly of this car, is certainly better than I expected. It feels way more together than I thought that it could, and to be honest, it's more fun than I thought it would be. I for one appreciate, especially in conditions like this, how you can just put your foot down. You know, it's a different car for road driving than it would be, let's say, if you're out on the track, but in these conditions, this is really good. For point to point, in the countryside, on twisty roads, with a little bit of drizzle, what more do you want than this? The more that I'm driving this and pushing it through some of these tighter corners, oh, there we go, a little bit of understeer, but I was going to say I'm actually quite enjoying it. Yeah, I prefer the back to be sliding out than the front. Different kind of drive, isn't it, really? Back where we began earlier, and it is now drizzling here again, so I've parked under the cover in front of the showroom where you might have spotted earlier this car inside, the Lightweight Performance E46 M3 CSL. We're going to go and take a look at that in a moment, but before we do, a few more things about this specific car that I've just been driving. And one thing around the front, of course you have all of the contrast, the black accents like the grille, the splitter, the wheels that go against the Misano blue paintwork, including a small touch that they've added there to the headlights just to make it look even sportier, and this car looks really very sporty. How low it is to the ground. We talked about the suspension that sits behind these 20-inch forged wheels with the M Performance brakes. I'm not normally the biggest fan of the coloured pinstripe around the outside, but it works okay on this car. But behind you've got this Eibach setup, the Pro Street multi-way suspension that you can go through 10 different settings, and it can actually be more comfortable than a standard M135i or more dynamic as I've been driving it today. We've then got the extended side skirts, we've got the contrast of the mirrors, and I always like a hot hatch that has a spoiler. The extra spoiler that they've added with the gurney flap at the rear too, carbon fibre spoiler, I think looks the part. And again, that diffuser that we talked about that you can have with the 2 different settings. Obviously, it's a fairly practical car, just to talk about that. You've got a power fold tailgate, you've got plenty of luggage space back here, you've got the folding rear seats as well, should you want them. Button to close that back down. The rear of the car, more space than before. You can see the seat, the driver's seat, at least on the other side in my position. Plenty of room in the back, and it's finished very nicely as well. The M details on the seat belts. I actually really quite like the interior of this. I think it's finished very, very well, in fact. But let's come through. I want to show you a few more things before we come to that in a moment about this on the inside, and also to warm up because it is now very, very cold here. So let's start it again for a moment. Got through some fuel there. Oh, you get a little pop on the start. Pop it into sport as well. It does sound surprisingly good. Better than you would think. Now, when you got it through the different modes, so for example here, you have individual, which you can configure. You've got a few different settings here that you can go through. You can see how you can change between sport and comfort for the steering, the motor, and the gearbox. This is all in German at the moment, but you can change all of that. Or you can obviously have it in the normal standard sport mode, which puts everything into the sport settings. But you've got the usual tiles. We've seen lots of this before in different menus, different BMW models. Driver status, you can have some displays and information depending what you want to have set up. Basically lots of configurability. You can adjust what shows where. Then for the dashboard, there's a new look here. The speedometer over to the left, obviously in kilometers per hour on this car. The digital central part, compass up top, seatbelt warning at the bottom. Then the speed limit recognition. I'm never the biggest fan of these because they often get it wrong. So you think you're in a 50, but then you turn out to be in a 100 and you're driving slow, or just confusing. Rev counter goes up to about 7,000 RPM, stop start of course as well. It's not bad, it's not bad. Auto lights and wipers, your stalks behind, cruise control here, heated steering wheel, very nice. Lets us know on the dash, light controls down there as well, your window and mirror controls as usual. This car has the manual seats, so to raise it, you've got your side support, your lumbar, raise and lower, pull out the front, and you can adjust lots of things, obviously, make it comfortable. Got this new trim piece here, lightweight designation inside, the carbon piece on the back of the wireless charging pad that you have here, the ashtray insert, USB port, learning as I go, and the familiar control pad in the center for all of your different settings, from your traction control, auto stop start, start stop for the engine with the Mazzano blue touch that goes all the way around the outside, and the control pad as well for the infotainment system. What else do we have really? Armrest storage, let's open that up. Obviously given the current times, we've got masks everywhere, USB ports, but all in all, not a bad place to be. We've got the sun visor, the sunroof, which has a cover over it at the moment. We open that with this toggle, all that back. We've got the mostly panoramic roof then, exposed up top. Quite a nice display for the lights and controls, and a mirrorless, a borderless rear view mirror, I should say as well. Now, one thing we have not done is take a look in the engine bay. So let's give that a double pull to release and head round and go and take just a quick look at what we've got up here. Let's open it up, no secondary catch. Of course, the 4-cylinder engine, unusual, this change away from the 6. And I tell you what, in, say, the Boxster and the Cayman, when they went from 6-cylinder engines to 4s, it made a much bigger difference. But because we're so used to the computerized sound inside from the BMW 6s, which don't make that much noise outside, that's why this isn't quite such a disastrous change, I would say, as in some other cars. I mean, it's the way things are going. I'd love the car, obviously, still with a 6-cylinder, but it does drive well, and critically, I think that's, at the end of the day, what's the most important. Anyway, let's close this and head inside to take a look at that. This car then is an E46 M3 CSL with a difference. Lightweight performance, as the name suggests. It's running 376 horsepower, 370 Newton meters. But come check this out. 14 years ago, it did a Nordschleife lap in 7 minutes and 50 seconds. For some perspective, that's quicker, I think, than my GT8 would be able to do a lap, and that car's much more modern and significantly more powerful. But come have a look, actually, at this. Completely stripped out. I mean, the CSL was always pretty stripped out, but very much seats, cage, carbon back deck. That's very much for purpose, right? For being driven on the Nürburgring, ring racing, proper ring tool, and an example of the kind of project I was talking about the Lightweight Performance do. Complete overhauls, huge projects, and that is very much one of those. Some final words then on the Lightweight M135, a very different driving experience to what I expected, but in a positive way. I think you have to think about this car not as the successor to the previous 1 Series, but more like its own thing. And being based on part sharing with the Mini means you do have those point and shoot go-kart characteristics, which to me are pretty fun to drive on the types of roads I've been out on today. There are some things about it that I don't necessarily like. For example, the attempt to make it sporty with that chunky steering wheel and the gigantic grills at the front, which aren't what you want in a pure sports car, a sports hatch for example, but I see where it's going. They have to look at the big picture, they have to look at the global market, and if this is what appeals to the masses, I suppose the numbers will tell them that in terms of the sales down the line. In terms of what Lightweight have done themselves, they've clearly made it a more dynamic drive. Of course, I don't have the basis of the regular car to directly compare, but I think that's a big part of why I've probably enjoyed it more than I thought I would today. I put that down to the characteristics of the suspension and the new software configuration that it's running as well. So I hope in any case you have enjoyed today's video to learn all about the Lightweight M135. I've certainly enjoyed my first opportunity to get on board the car, to take it for a drive and go down some perfect roads for the occasion as well. If only the sun was out and it wasn't drizzling. But that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching as always, guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!